Your Excellency, Honorable Dr. Musalia Mudavadi, Prime Cabinet Secretary and CS Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, and Acting Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Interior and National Administration, the Commissioner General of Prisons, Mr. Patrick Arandu, Secretary, Probation and Aftercare Services, Dr. Christine Obondi, who is also the Chair of the Technical Committee, the Country Director, International IDLO, Teresa Mugadza, our very valuable partners and stakeholders, senior officials from government presence, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. At the onset, I wish to thank you, Your Excellency, for your speedy and timely intervention to ensure that our prison officers will get their increment as directed by His Excellency the President, and we are most grateful for your intervention. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you today to this important occasion as we launch public consultation on the development and legal and policy framework for correctional services, and thereafter disseminate to our valuable stakeholders and members of the public the consultation paper on correctional services, legal and policy framework. Ladies and gentlemen, from the onset, allow me to thank most sincerely His Excellency Dr. Musalia Mudavadi for agreeing to grace this important occasion. There is no better way to demonstrate your commitment and support to the ongoing correctional services reforms agenda than your presence here today. Equally, I wish to express heartfelt gratitude to all of you for finding time out of your demanding schedules to attend this meeting. Your Excellency, as the government agency responsible for coordinating implementation for correctional policy and programs, the State Department for Correctional Services sits at the core of our national security and the wider criminal justice sector. It contributes to community safety through humane containment of offenders and ensuring that offenders are rehabilitated, reformed, and reintegrated back to society. All these functions are pivotal to the attainment of an all-inclusive and transformative society. To reorient the management of correctional services to speak to the current offender management practices in line with the Constitution and to consolidate the fragmented laws governing correctional practices in Kenya, the Cabinet Secretary, Interior and National Administration appointed a technical committee to develop a new legal and policy framework for correctional services via Gazette Notice number 5621 on 30th April 2024. Your Excellency, I am delighted and appreciative of the strides made by the technical committee thus far. The team is now planning to conduct public participation on the development of the legal and policy framework for correctional services. To aid in this, they have developed a consultation paper that seeks stakeholders and public views about the proposals for correctional services policy and bill aimed at reviewing and consolidating all laws related to correctional services and offender management. Your Excellency, before I call upon Dr. Charles Otieno, our technical advisor, who has been pivotal in supporting the team, to take us through the consultation paper, I wish to sincerely thank IDLO through their country director, Teresa Mugadza, for facilitating the activities of the technical committee thus far. In the same breath, I recognize with a lot of appreciation the input of all the other stakeholders represented here today for their continued support towards improving the management of correctional services. This is our country, we are Kenyans, and it is our responsibility to advance the nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Your Excellency, I'm here to perform a task that soon will be performed by a robot called Courier with artificial intelligence. But allow me today to perform it because it's an important task for the nation. I'll take only 5 minutes to take you through the framework, and what we're going to look at are the main issues that are going to form the topics for consultation. We all know that our correctional system has the laws that have been mentioned. We have the Kenya Prison Service, and we have probation and aftercare service. We also have Directorate of Children Services that deals with rehabilitation of children in conflict with the law. So the correctional system exists in Kenya. It's been functioning since 1902, and the problem is that most of the laws since 1946 have never been reformed. So the process that we are undergoing is to make sure that the correctional system undergoes reforms that are in line with the Constitution, but are also in line with the international best practices. So we've identified about 27 issues that we want to consult the public on, but they can be summarized into 10 topics. The first one is rights and obligation of offenders. The second one is administration and management of correctional institutions. The third, coordination of correctional services institutions. Fourth, offender management. We are looking at custodial and non-custodial offenders. 5 is aftercare and resettlement of offenders in the community. And then 6 is oversight of management of offenders. And then 7, parole system. 8, prison enterprise. And 9, oversight and accountability of correctional services institutions to the public, to Parliament, and the rest. And then number 10 is training and professional development. So the team has looked at all these issues. Legislative framework to the Constitution requires that certain principles are respected. One of them is upholding the Bill of Rights. The second one is promoting public safety. The third is professionalism and within the services. And the fourth one is diversity and inclusion. These will be subjected to consultations. The public need to tell us how they want this principle to be respected. But the other key areas that we're going to consult on is the institutional framework for management of correctional services. The first one is Kenya Prison Service, looking at the Office of the Commissioner General and the deputies, the function of that office, the appointment and term of service, and then the role of Prisons Council as far as the service is concerned, youthful offenders institutions, how they should be managed and coordinated across correctional services, including coordination with children services, and then responsibilities. Then we have Kenya Prison Service, Probation Service. We're going to look at the Office of the Secretary Probation Service, the constitution of that office, the function of that office, the role, and then we look at the Probation Council that is going to bring in all the agencies that are involved in probation and aftercare, so that there is one of management service, management of offense, sentence planning, how parole system should be administered in the correctional services. In issues, training policy and curriculum for correctional services, training institutions that will be established and managed by correctional services, and then establishment correctional services leadership academy, and how that academy should help in promoting proceed. Finally, we are looking at oversight and accountability. There are 4 main issues there: internal complaint mechanism within prison and probation services, inspection of facilities, independent investigation of complaint from offenders and also members of the services, and stakeholder engagement. So again, we want the public to tell us how they want to see internal complaints managed within prison be conducted, in what mechanism, should we set up mechanisms for investigation. Public hearing and field, Kisumu, Kakamega, Nakuru, Eldoret, their customers. Then there'll be stakeholders consultations. Some of the stakeholders are represented here from 9th to 10th of September. This will be done in Nairobi. We have stakeholders from the criminal justice system and also some from the state organs, and we also have external stakeholders. Then there'll be thematic areas consultations with key technical departments and experts, and we hope that these are enough to guide us. Thank you very much, sir.
correctional service policy and all our stakeholders and development partners, because this is an inclusive process. All of us are. Any volunteers? We want to hear anything, the good, the bad, the ugly, criticism, any feedback that will help this process. And I believe this is the start of the public participation process. Karibuni. Yes.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Selina Iseme. I'm from the Public Service Commission. Just something I've observed. One of the areas that the team will be consulting on is diversity and inclusion. And here, there's no sign language interpreter. I don't know whether we are inclusive in terms of that. So maybe as a comment, as the team goes out, the public is diverse. So ensure that the people that come to give their views are also diverse, because they have a stake in what is going on. So you will have to confirm that the venue is accessible and whatever presentations are being made are also accessible. I had a time when we were doing public participation and the venue was on a 12th floor of a building and it didn't have a lift and people came in crutches. You can imagine how that happened. So just caution. Thank you.
Thank you. That is well noted.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Moses Maranga, Executive Director, NCHA. Maybe with your permission, PS, allow me to say that the Honorable Chief Justice would have wanted to be here, and she said that she supports the process, stakeholder engagement, and the entire justice sector, which she heads under NCAJ, is committed to the process. Having said that, I know we have just interacted with a few slides. Please allow me to mention that I have seen several regions. The team can explore other stakeholder engagement initiatives. Nowadays tunaona watu wakiongea kwa X-Space. Perhaps, I don't know kama siku moja PS tutakupata huko ukisikiza maoni, but it's something maybe the team can explore, plus many other forums which may not necessarily be regional based, but ICT based. Thank you.
Thank you. That is well noted.
Thank you very much, the chief guest and the PS. My name is Laban Ayiro, the Vice Chancellor DASTA, but also a member of the International Correction Education Services. And I think the presentation on the framework was a little rushed. So maybe you need to create space within your programming for people to interrogate the framework and then be able to send in their contributions. But I'm hoping that as we go through this framework, there are key imperatives internationally that you need to make reference to. One is the human rights compliance. I think this one we must be very strong on it as Kenyans. Two, rehabilitation and reintegration. And that's where the universities are coming in and other partners. I think that is very critical, rehabilitation and reintegration. Three, the policy framework must emphasize improving infrastructure in our prisons. Our prisons are centers of hell on this earth. There's so much overcrowding and healthcare is minimal. Four, legal reforms. Our penal code, criminal code have to be looked at extensively by the team that is working on this. 5, staff training and welfare. I think our prison officers have been subjugated to those conditions of prisoners, and so their training and welfare needs to be included in this framework. And number 6, I think as a country, because of the overcrowding in our prisons, we must have alternative sentencing as a thrust in the policy framework. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that you are working around those ones, but they must come out clearly. The challenges, a good policy framework should be bold enough to bring out the challenges so that we can bring in objectives and be able to cost them. A framework without budgetary implications is just a piece of paper. So we need to do that by looking at our challenges. But I'll submit a paper on strategic recommendations that can go in this policy framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. We sincerely appreciate that feedback. I believe the committee will take that into consideration, particularly what you have alluded to in the last bit of the challenges and the budgetary implications. We will take that into consideration.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Mombi. I think my main contribution is, so I'm somewhere in the middle between a Gen Z and a millennial. So the phrase public consultation is a bit sensitive at the moment. So my plea is just to make sure that the actual contributions by the people who we are here for, who are the inmates, are actually taken into consideration. I often find myself conflicted when we come in spaces like this. We're in a nice hotel and we're having sausages and nice coffee, but the people who we are actually here for, as the person who's spoken before me has mentioned, are in hell, more or less. I was once arrested and stayed in for an offense that I didn't commit. It was very little, but I would not want to be there again. So I've seen there's a long schedule of public participation hearings, but the people who would tell us most about what will make a difference are the poor and marginalized, who often find themselves in prison, and the ones who are in prison themselves. So as the per diem is being pocketed, please let's not lose focus of the people who we are actually doing this for. And if it helps, let's remember that at the very end.
Well noted.
My name is Mary Airo, the National Coordinator of the Paralegal Society of Kenya. And I want to give my view as a person who has practiced or worked in the prison for many years in different prisons in the Republic of Kenya. And I want to put emphasis on the issue of infrastructure. And I'm putting that with the focus on the intersex persons, that we now have quite a big number of intersex persons. And looking at the case that we had some times back, where this person made their way into our prison. The first prison that this person made their way was Langata Women's Prison. And from there, after the search, they realized that this is an intersex person. Then the person ended up in committee prison, and where this person suffered a lot of violation. So the prisons, our prisons do not have that. Were built perhaps at times when we do not have the intersex persons. So that must be put into consideration. The other thing I'm looking at is children accompanying their mothers in prison. And I'm saying that because having practiced in the prison, I have seen these children that many times it is the welfare officer who goes out of their way to get partners who can actually provide food for these children, food in terms of food for children, for example, milk, and other things for young children. So as we look into that, I think it is important to actually factor in these children that accompany their mothers hours in prison. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is noted.
Thank you, Madam PS, Your Excellency. My name is Peter Oko. I stand on two fronts. I work in the criminal justice sector, and I'm also an ex-inmate. And I'd like to raise just two issues here. Number one is on the prison's earning scheme. I hope it's captured when we go into that. Because after many years of someone serving in prison and they come out and they can't start their lives afresh, even though they have the skill set, it's hard to reintegrate. The second bit is the issue of certificate of good conduct. If you've rehabilitated someone, they've come out, they want to start their lives afresh, they can't get jobs because of that certificate of good conduct. They've paid their dues to the society, on the other hand, they can't get jobs. I hope that is also captured. Because I know, even within our system, and His Excellency Musalia knows very well, that one of his key brothers, Honorable Raila Odinga, is an ex-inmate at committee. But he gets jobs and is now getting a job at the AU as you're championing that. So what I'm saying is just about the equity level, where we can also champion for the others also who've been through the same committee and they can get jobs, even the TVETs. Madam, you know you have some of the best trained instructors who've come out of prison after many years and they can't get jobs even in the TVETs to train our people. So those are the things I wanted to raise. Then finally, I hope there's a policy also as we work on compensation for wrongful convictions. Because there are people who've gone through the system for crimes they didn't commit, they come out of prison, they can't start their lives afresh, there's no compensation policy for wrongful convictions. I know the NCAJ has been doing a great job. Some of the laws that we want to look at, they've actually been, working on them. So I hope some of these things will be captured to have equity in the justice system. Thank you.
Good morning again. My name is Maurice Kaberia. I work with Justice Defenders. We work in prisons. I'm also an ex-convict, having served some years in death sentence. First of all, I want to recognize the efforts, even with the previous act of the Prisons Act, the CAP 90, of the Prisons Service of Rehabilitation. Because while in prison, that's where I studied, I got my law degree, and now I'm almost joining the bar very soon. So I wanted to see whether we can be able to do also a policy on education, because it's a great and impactful rehabilitative tool. We have bodies and organizations which support education in prisons, but the government itself, and our Excellency, the Prime Minister, Prime Cabinet Secretary hears this, is that the government does not put enough money into prisons for education purposes. And this is a sector where most of people who led in prison actually had problems. Most of the times we criminalize poverty because people who are illiterate don't know even their rights, don't know even how to avoid going into crime. They want bread for them, for their children, for their families, and they find themselves in crime. But if they had an opportunity, maybe through education, they could have done better and become better citizens. So to stop crime and to reduce the rate crimes in Kenya, I think we need to look at this point about educating people who are in prison, so that also them, when they come out, they can be able to educate other people on how to avoid crime and become good ambassadors of a free society, crime-free society. I also want to touch on paralegalism. Most of our inmates who are in prison today, and Madam PS, you know this, that most of the inmates are remedies, people who have been remanded, awaiting trial. And most of them cannot even afford the services of advocates. So what are we doing in this policy, this act? Where do we place paralegalism in prisons? I think it should be a section, a clearly defined section on paralegalism, allowing paralegal officers, both prison officers and also inmates, to do the paralegal work like we do. We've done it practically, and you can see it happening. We have paralegals who are officers in prison, and they are helping inmates to assess justice. So I think this can be done and can be included in our policy and act, and this will give a more humane society within the community in prisons. Thank you.
Madam PS, Chief Guest, thank you so much. My name is Isao Riaro. I work for Legal Resource Foundation Trust. Thank you so much for having us here. Some of the issues I wanted to raise have already been raised, so allow me just to commend you and the team for taking this process forward, the team led by Dr. Bondi, because the reforms have been long in the making, and we are glad that finally we are going to have the fruit. I'd like to humbly request if we could get a draft of the bill as early as we can, so that we were able to interrogate it and share our views. As civil society organizations working within the correctional facilities, we are keen to support this process, and we have a lot of materials, some which we shared with Dr. Maraga. I'd also humbly request if we could have an email, because I've seen that in terms of public consultations, if we could have emails, and also where we could deposit the memorandums even ahead of the public hearings. Just to conclude by thanking you once again for the good work done. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam PS, Honorable Prime Cabinet Secretary. My name is Hamisi Mzari. I work with Justice Defenders. I just want to highlight what my brother Maurice talked about paralegal work, but I want to bring the perspective of the legal aid work. Looking at the team that is working on the current correctional bill, I do not see members from the National Legal Aid Service. And almost half of the inmates in prisons are those who are undergoing trial. And out of that number, a great majority of them, around 80% of them, do not have legal representation in court. And they're the people who are overcrowding our prisons at the moment. We have organizations that are offering paralegal work to train these inmates on self-representation. But we do not have any legal framework that ensures that some of these organizations are funded. The National Legal Aid Service in itself is not funded enough to provide legal representation for these inmates who are awaiting trial and they're in custody. It is a constitutional right that every accused person must have legal representation, but it is not a reality. Looking at the framework I've seen, we are leaning too much on the convicted prisons, the offenders, their rehabilitation, but we are forgetting this critical mass population in prison that requires legal representation and may end up being convicted wrongfully or not receiving justice. How are we going to ensure that the same is also incorporated in the new bill, which will become an act, so that we can have stakeholders, partners, and government ensure that we have somebody like an office of public defender, or at least we have a way of funding for those organizations that are offering this legal aid service to inmates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think those ideas that have been advanced are valid, and I think the technical committee, the Secretariat, has taken them into account, and I think we will address all of them, and we see where some of them fit. Obviously, some of them are cross-cutting, and probably we will take them to the National Commission on Access to Justice, because some of them are domiciled in other justice sector players' departments. So, but the ones that are domiciled in our department, we will take them into consideration. And Your Excellency, I'm happy to report that indeed it is true. From our facilities, we've had graduations. Recently, we had 14 graduate from in law. Then we have one who is going to graduate soon in a Bachelor of Medicine, and we have others who've graduated in mechanical engineering and veterinary medicine. So indeed it is true, and I agree with the delegate that it is important that we have a robust and concrete education policy within the system, so that the persons who are incarcerated do actually benefit from the education sector. We already have an education unit that is doing a tremendous job to ensure that the persons who are sitting exams are actually incorporated. Again, we will also take into consideration the issues raised about parole, about a stipend, and that's why we have the prison enterprise being one of the issues that will be tackled by the bill and the policy. So I thank you all very much for all the ideas that are advanced, and we will take Dr. Maraga's idea into consideration, that we actually go into the X space as a way of public participation. Perhaps it may wind up being even more effective. So I thank you all, and I wish to hand over the matter to the issue, the session to our MC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam PS. And as the PS goes back to the podium, yes, the document will be available from immediately after this function. We'll give a link where you can download, but all of us here will have a hard copy of the consultation paper. Madam PS.
Thank you very much. And now it is my honor and humble duty to invite His Excellency, the Prime Cabinet Secretary. I request we all be upstanding so that he can come and make his remarks. Welcome, Your Excellency.